the house wakes to the clicks and clacks of long-term care.
Nurse Lisa. Yeah, this is where it's like a massive responsibility because it's get your dosage and everything right. Morning.
There's no time to ease into the day.
Gonna do meds, okay?
James Bascoe-Smith is one of a handful of people in London who has survived a deadly pattern of knife injury.
It's just cold.
On Tuesday, the 23rd of February last year, James left his mum on the doorstep for a few minutes. He was test riding a new bike. In that time, he was run over, then stabbed repeatedly. An innocent victim caught between two rival gangs. Suddenly, a young boy into gymnastics and his DJ decks was having his chest opened by medics on the street. His two attackers have been sentenced to life in prison. The judge said Taquain Lewis and Leon Rashid had been searching for a target to murder. The attack triggered by a drill music video and online provocation between the gangs. James was in court today, but he gave his impact statement through a video message. "I did not deserve this," he told the court. "I just want to know why they did this to me." His attackers watched from the dock.
There's somebody outside that door with him 24/7.
I first met the family on the helipad of King's College Hospital, exactly 1 week after the stabbing.
I had a FaceTime from him with him on the floor, like telling me, "Mum, I've been stabbed."
Yes, we have got justice. It still doesn't change the position James is in. It doesn't change the lifestyle that we're now having to live.
This is James's journey and the story of his family and friends. They too are the victims of violence. James, what do you think about when you think of the future? Five knives were found on the road where James was attacked. His liver was lacerated and his lung was punctured. He lost a significant amount of blood, which led to brain damage.
So at the early stages, we had family counselling when this first happened, and it was a huge help.
But the help wasn't accessible. Lisa's sister happened to know a counsellor, and moving to a specially adapted house was a struggle.
Up to this point, we still kind of feel like we've been hard done by, because it's everything that we want to do, we're having to fight for it. Oh gosh, we had such a rough move with housing. It was very much just like, well, we can't help you. And we was trying to explain to them, but if we was a member of a gang and we had to flee our current area, the council or whoever it was would pick us up and move us out of borough quite easily. But instead, for us, it was because we weren't a gang member, there weren't no right channels that the council had to follow in order to get us to move.
And what, 4?
5.
Yeah.
And yet life had to move quickly for everyone. There's Maddie, who's eager to help her cousin James, but grapples with the realities of violence in the community. She's 5.
Currently, Madison's in therapy because of the impact. A few months after this happened, we was at home getting ready for church, and Maddie said, "Mum, there's people outside, they're screaming and shouting, and there was an incident," and she said, "They're going to come and kill me. I don't want to go. I don't want to go outside."
We sent freedom of information requests to the 29 major trauma units in the UK, asking for figures on the numbers of 16 to 25-year-olds left with life-changing injuries from a weapon. We found the data on life-changing injuries difficult to access, and it's acknowledged that when numbers are being tracked, there's no uniformity within the system. So, for example, at what age do you stop being a young person? That changes from one organisation to the next. So it's little wonder that families are struggling to access mental health support or, say, housing support when the system doesn't measure what it needs to provide.
We very seldom focus on the actual survivors. When you're a survivor from this type of extreme trauma, you survive with consequences.
Duncan Bew was James's surgeon.
I think if there was better visibility in life-changing injuries, I think it could make a real impact in terms of services, to be able to wrap around patients, to provide a continuum of support and not just focus on those early days, so when they first present with trauma. When we look at the patients that we saw during the COVID period, we had about a 40% reduction in trauma victims coming through the hospital during that period, but then we're now back up to pre-pandemic levels.
James's teenage sanctuary can also feel lonely at times.
How often do you speak to your friends? Do they ring?
Weekly.
Not as often as you would like, eh? I know James has had a couple of close friends which, you know, they've dropped out of college. The younger ones, I think we definitely need to look out for them a lot more and, you know, work with them, see what things we can put in place, because I think they're just forgotten about.
There are times when a gloom descends on the family, triggered by money worries or flashbacks. But Lisa says overall, they're the lucky ones, because this support and encouragement is without price.
Ria Chatterjee there with James's story. Now, it's estimated that more than 200,000 children in England between the ages of 11 and 17 are vulnerable to serious violence. Today, a report from the Commission on Young Lives says a combination of COVID, the rising cost of living, and a possible return to austerity is a gift to those who exploit children. It says the crisis of teenage violence requires some immediate changes, including monthly COBRA-style government meetings, a new Sure Start programme for teenagers, and the extension of free school meals to all families receiving universal credit. Well, Anne Longfield, who chairs the Commission, is with me, and I'm also joined by Amani Simpson, who works alongside her and runs a social enterprise, Aviard Inspires, to empower young people, and he also survived a stabbing attack. Thank you to both of you for coming in. For anyone who needs to understand the impact of the violence you're talking about today, it is written in a terrible way through James's story.
It is, completely.
He told the court, I did not deserve this. It is hard to live like this. There are other Jameses, there are children who are killed. What needs to be done? How serious is it?
Yeah, this is devastating to those individuals, their families, their communities. And it's something that it's in front of us in plain view, but no one's looking, in my view. There are, of course, interventions. There are people doing fantastic work. There are great local organisations. They're living hand to mouth often with short-term money without getting that support. And nationally, we do some things to alleviate some of this, but it's all sticking plaster stuff. We need to really commit to get to the bottom of these social problems and really help prevent this happening, which is why we're putting forward these plans today, which will help make that happen.
But the report suggests that there are children who are known to the authorities, who are known to be vulnerable, and yet they're being ignored. I mean, Amani, what's your experience?
First and foremost, I think it's heartbreaking, that video. My heart goes out to James and his family as a survivor of knife crime who has been able to turn my life around and live a particular standard of life. It breaks my heart to watch that. And yeah, you're right, there's lots of young people that are known to the system and unfortunately still getting groomed. And that's why we put these recommendations forward, because we don't want that to continue fundamentally. There's so many different services, and a lot of the time they're not speaking to each other. They're not wrapping around this young person and their family. And we need to make sure that, you know, systemic changes are put in place that are sustainable.
And often not offering practical support.
Yeah.
I mean, we heard of cases where, you know, there was a young person with maybe 20 or even 30 professionals around them, but still they weren't getting that practical help. And there would be the meetings going on about their welfare, but at the same time they were suffering at risk of awful consequences. Yeah. It's as if no one understands who is responsible for actually protecting these children and keeping them safe from harm. And that's part of what we need to resolve.
I mean, reading your report, going to any court case involving children and young people who have been involved in violence or who've carried out violence, you'll very often hear both victim and perpetrator are both known to have had problems at school, maybe to have been excluded at school. People know they are struggling, and yet nothing is done until there is a terrible tragedy. Where is it going wrong?
Well, I think that the will needs to be there to resolve this. I don't think there is an acknowledgement of the magnitude of this and the impact of this, which is why I think we need to recognise that this is a threat to our country. These are 200,000 young people with lives ahead of them. Are we going to stand by and let them come to the most dreadful kind of experiences that we're seeing? So it has to be that level of intervention from the top, from government. It needs better use of money and the engine of government behind it with that will to make a difference. David Cameron did a bit of this with child sexual exploitation. It now needs to be the same with this.
And also, just to add to that as well, a lot of the projects that we're hearing about are not always sustainable. They get funding for a couple of years and you start to kind of build a relationship with the young person, and then they pull it out from underneath the legs of the family and the young people. That's unacceptable. You know, when reports like this come out, and ours is, you know, obviously one of a few that have come out before to say this is what needs to happen, when are we going to stop kind of...
I mean, as a young man, you became involved for a little while in county lines. You ended up being
I was actually groomed into county
which
lines.
is exactly what the report is talking about.
I was groomed. I was
Children who are vulnerable.
I was in a secure child home, secure home, and kind of my relationship with my family had broken down, and someone saw that vulnerability and took advantage. And his actual words to me were, you know, do you want to make some money? And obviously, you know, anyone in here, we say, do you want to make some money? They're going to say yes. I didn't realise what I was getting into. And, you know, I'm blessed that I had a support system when I was ready to kind of take another path that I could lean on. But I feel devastated for the young people that don't have that. And yes, there's mentoring services and things like that, but, you know, there's so much more that needs to happen on a systemic level for these young people.
And it's critical, isn't it, when Amani says, you know, someone says to him, do you want to make some money? Yeah. People scoff at the idea sometimes that poverty is part of the problem or that the cost of living crisis might be exacerbating this. But what did you find?
But it's very real, you know, the lure of that. But also now kids knowing that their families have very little, sometimes nothing, they feel that responsibility themselves for bringing money into the household. So we need to fight back. I mean, one of the things we're saying is actually have an army of youth practitioners to be the ones that are on the lookout for these kids as well, to be able to support them. But again, with all of these things, it takes will and it's political choice.
And also at the moment, sorry to cut across you, but at the moment, you know, this raft of recommendations costs money. I mean, do you hear the government saying at this particular point, yes, we'll make these kids a priority?
No.
No, not in any way. But I would say we're spending billions at the moment when things go wrong. This is about spending it better in a different way to not only prevent crisis, but also to help these young people succeed as citizens in this country.
Yeah, and one of the key things from the report that we've highlighted is that actually using the proceeds of crime that are sitting in dormant accounts and, you know, being able to use that as a way to kind of fuel this army of role models for young people, to me, that feels like a no-brainer. It doesn't take too much to arrange that, right, in the sense of kind of accessing that and putting the right things in place, and obviously allowing like an administration of national charities to get around this initiative. Because to me, you know, when I speak about my own personal experience, it was a youth worker or it was a teacher or a mentor that looked like me, that understood my perspective, that gave me hope. He spoke to me. You know, I've got a teacher that said to me, look, I don't care what you've done prior to walking into my classroom. From this moment forward, I'm only going to talk about your future and try and help you to get there. And we need more of that for young people.